Hum. Let us never struggle with meditation again, starting tonight. Together, let us relaxingly recite. Nothing dispels the disinformation, misinformation, mythology, and superstition surrounding mindfulness and meditation, quite like neuroscience. Let us begin by considering mindfulness. Every time we inhale, we are wired to access the sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way. Vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, which is quite antithetical to the rigidity and controlling tendencies inherent in concentration. But what have we evolved to notice? We have evolved to notice perceptions. And I'm going to change this for a moment. Please bear with me. Whoops, well, that was my mistake. Let's try that again. Sorry, guys. I got a little confused. Let's try this again. We have evolved to notice perceptions such as seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like. We have also evolved to notice the full spectrum of human emotions, intentions, cognitions, recollections, and imaginings. If this mindfulness is the natural function of our sympathetic nervous system, then why do we sit down every 12 hours or so to formally practice? Every time we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this or the verb noticing during our inhalation, we interrupt the habit of our clever cerebral cortex to compete against our sympathetic nervous system, and instead we set space for these two to cooperate. But what are we to do with all that we notice? With each inhalation, we are wired to notice all manner of things. From the internal to the external, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful. From the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. What are we to do with all this stuff? Meditate. So come, let us explore the neuroscience of meditation. Each time we exhale, we are wired to effortlessly and automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is divided between the lower third and the upper third of that same spinal cord we mentioned previously. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to support our physical relaxation and mental release. Let's try this again. Our physical relaxation and mental release of that which we noticed during our previous inhalation. To the point that that which we notice could feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, any good English teacher could remind us that a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. Thus, we have to ask the question, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky? on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although compelling to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. Thus, as we could see, emptiness only makes sense when seen through a flexible worldview. Let's try this again. When seen through a flexible worldview that accepts that not all statements are literal, requiring blind faith or pseudo-intellectual mental gymnastics. One might ask if this relaxing and releasing is the natural behavior of our parasympathetic nervous system, then why bother sitting in mindfulness and meditation every 12 hours or so? Each time we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease or the multisyllabic verb relaxing during our exhalation, we are interrupting the habit of our clever cerebral cortex to actively compete against our parasympathetic nervous system, and instead open space for these two to cooperate in a delightfully therapeutic manner. This is why the Buddha taught mindfulness and meditation. Now, I'm going to add something to this, as I threatened to the other night. So let's go right here. I'm going to hit Ugly View and hit Copy. So here we go. Whoops, that was weird. Here we go. Okay, thank you very much for hanging in there while I was typing at Mach 2 with my hair on fire, he said sarcastically. Now let's together recite it. Oopsie. I hope I didn't do what I just think I did. Let's find out. So, together let us recite it relaxingly. For some of us, sitting in mindfulness and meditation for about an hour twice daily is absolutely no problem. However, some of us could require a more gradual or hedonistic approach. Thus, sitting in mindfulness and meditation for about 5 minutes every 12 hours or so could be a good start. The second week, that could be lengthened to 10 minutes every 12 hours. The third week, that could be lengthened to 15 minutes every 12 hours. Over the course of 12 weeks, one could thusly condition one's body and mind to sit for an hour every 12 hours or so. One of the benefits of this incremental approach is that it could give our body, mind, partner, pets, children, and schedule an opportunity to gently acclimate to this lifestyle change. One might ask if this relaxing and releasing is the natural behavior of our parasympathetic nervous system. Then why bother sitting in mindfulness and meditation every 12 hours or so? Each time we silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease and the multisyllabic verb relaxing during our exhalation, we are interrupting the habit of our clever cerebral cortex to actively compete against our parasympathetic nervous system, and instead open space for these two to cooperate in a delightfully therapeutic manner. This is why the Buddha taught mindfulness and meditation. And now, my friends, let us shift gears. Well, allow me to rephrase it. Having completed our opening lesson and fulfilled the promise of the title of this live stream, now let us shift gears. It is Obi-Wan Kenobi Wednesday evening. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day. Let me try this again. For the last 30 years, I've harnessed my autistic special interests and my ADHD hyperfixation for about 8 hours a day, almost every day. I studied, practiced, mastered, and reverse engineered the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I could become your nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Now let's turn to the latest iteration of very easy syncing meditation. It's called syncing meditation because that's the direction our energy is flowing. So what I'm going to do, molto presto, is hopefully click the right button, for an interesting change of pace. Now I'm going back over here, I'm going to hit button 36 and see if this fits on the page. It does. Cowabunga. Even better. Together, whatever comes, may all beings notice, relax, and flow. Whatever stays, may all beings notice, relax, and flow. Whatever goes, may all beings notice, relax, and flow. When we rest the great knuckle at the base of our right index finger upon the tip of our left index finger, palms up in our lap, we gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the crown region of our head. As mentioned, so now let us silently and mentally recite the verb noticing during each inhalation as well as the verb relaxing during each exhalation. Now, the moment that you have a specific question about Buddhist recitation, Buddhist meditation, or Buddhist philosophy, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. Good evening, Shivi. Let us recite a passage or two of the vast expanse of the diamond-like mind, composed more than 14 centuries ago by Parahe Vajra, translated from the Tibetan by Shokya Norbu, translated from the Italian by Adriano Clemente, adapted and amplified by yours truly. And if you have any difficulty reading this size font, do let me know. Together, present bliss and later bliss, or what is directly experienced and what ensues from it. Since they imply the defect of an aspect, one should not rely on them. What? People are often concerned about the consequences of their actions. And the scary idea is that such a thing defies non-duality. Now you could say, dude, I'm not scared of getting shot or going to prison. What's to stop me from shooting a neighbor I find annoying? Simply this. The more authentically and consistently we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more we stimulate a part of our brain known as the anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the seat of empathy and the hub of our mirror neurons. Therefore, the more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more our choices, utterances, and deeds flow not from scatteredness, not from contrivance, but from love's centered spontaneity. So instead of meditating because we have a goal, we meditate for the same reason we breathe. We're wired to do so. And life works better when we cooperate with that wiring. Why do we drink water? We're wired to do so. And life just seems better when we stop fighting such a benign instinct. Why do we go to sleep at night? We're wired to do so. And so what we notice is the more authentically we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more in harmony we are with the wisdom of our body, the creativity of our mind, and the flow of our love. Let's continue. Present bliss and later bliss, or what is directly experienced and what ensues from it. Since they imply the defect of an aspect, one should not rely on them. Present bliss and later bliss, or what is directly experienced and what ensues from it. Since they imply the defect of an aspect, one should not rely on them. Present bliss, so in other words, we choose not to be slaves of our fear of punishment or our desire for reward. Present bliss and later bliss, what is directly experienced and what ensues from it. Since they imply the defect of an aspect, one should not rely on them. Present bliss and later bliss are what is directly experienced and what ensues from it. Since they imply the defect of an aspect, one should not rely on them. Present bliss and later bliss are what is directly experienced and what ensues from it. Since they imply the defect of an aspect, one should not rely on them. Let us rest the tip of each of our left fingers upon the great knuckle of our right hand. Invert this assembly and rest it palms up in our lap. Doing so could gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the region of our throat that feels as if it tightens just before we cry. Let's relaxingly recite. The three times are one, without distinction, without past or future. It exists from the beginning. Since all, pervaded by the Dharmakaya, are the same, it abides in nature as total greatness. The three times are one, without distinction, without past or future. It exists from the beginning. What does this mean? The three times, literally, or the three times is a turn of phrase that represents the past, the present, and the future. We're told they are one without distinction. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that however different they might seem as we breathe in, as we relax into our exhalation, they each smack of the same non-graspability. This wisdom of letting go has always been this way. As long as there have been creatures with a central nervous system that could perceive and release in this manner, then the wisdom of letting go has been available since then. Let's continue. Since all, pervaded by the Dharmakaya, are the same, it abides in nature as total greatness. All beings are pervaded by the capacity to master awareness and release. That's what Dharmakaya, or truth body, is. It's a metaphor for the mastery of awareness and release. And so since we all have that capacity due to our autonomic nervous system, in that facet, we are the same. The greatness, therefore, we are capable of greatness, of great peace, great love, great cooperation. The three times are one, without distinction, without past or future. It exists from the beginning. Since all, pervaded by the Dharmakaya, are the same, it abides in nature as total greatness. The three times are one, without distinction, without past or future. It exists from the beginning. Since all, pervaded by the Dharmakaya, are the same, it abides in nature as total greatness. The three times are one, without distinction, without past or future. It exists from the beginning. Since all, pervaded by the Dharmakaya, are the same, it abides in nature as total greatness. Remember, this is written from the point of view of egalitarianism, not elitism. The three times are one, without distinction, without past or future. It exists from the beginning. Since all, pervaded by the Dharmakaya, are the same, it abides in nature as total greatness. Let us, when we rest the great knuckle at the base of our right middle finger, upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap. we gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the heart region of our chest. During our inhalation, so we practice the essence of mindfulness by silently and mentally reciting the verb noticing during each inhalation. And we practice the essence of meditation by silently and mentally reciting the three-syllable verb relaxing during each exhalation. Together, let us relaxingly recite. Finding oneself in the three realms of existence. All is just a name and a magical illusion. One moment, if you please. Okay. So in the previous bit, we talked about the 3 times. Now we're talking about the 3 realms. And don't worry, I will explain what that is in just a moment. Finding oneself in the 3 realms of existence, all is just a name and a magical illusion. Even the great status of a Chakravartin universal king, being like a magical illusion, is an abode to purify. Finding oneself in the 3 realms of existence, all is just a name and a magical illusion. The 3 realms, and this is meaningless, are the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. This is just a bit of mysticism. The pre-Buddhist, some pre-Buddhist meditators were not fans of mindfulness, and so they would try to become metaphorically intoxicated on their own neurotransmitters until they perceived nothing but bliss. But that's not a transcendence of reality, that's an ignoring of reality. So whether we are experiencing mindfulness or we're in some state where we're trying to escape from mindfulness, everything we experience has an illusion of certitude about it. I look to my left and I see a sofa, but that's just a name. I could pick up a pencil, but in Mexico that's called a lapis. It's the same implement, different name. And yet people have fought bloody wars over different names for the same thing. Whatever, as we breathe in, we cannot help but notice our labels. But as we relax into our exhalation, every label could feel as non-graspable as an illusionist's magic trick. Even together, even the great status of a Chakravartin universal king, being a magical illusion, is an abode to purify. What does that mean? Whether or not there are just humans and animals, or whether there are all manner of entities, visible or invisible, corporeal or incorporeal, whether there are gods or goddesses or not. If you can imagine the most fabulous god that you can imagine, he would still be subject to our perception and release. And that entity. And no matter how opulent a heaven we can imagine, real or imagined, it is still something that can be perceived and released involuntarily with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems dance metaphorically upon our inhalation and our exhalation. So everything is subject to the 2 truths. Everything is subject to appearance and release. Dog dew is subject to appearance and release. Chocolate is subject to appearance and release. Together. Finding oneself in the three realms of existence, all is just a name and a magical illusion. Even the great status of a Chakravartin universal king being a magical illusion is but an abode to purify. What's this here? Is that 20? Okay. Finding oneself in the three realms of existence, all is just a name and a magical illusion. Even the great status of a Chakravartin king, universal king, being a magical illusion, is but an abode to purify. Finding oneself in the three realms of existence, all is just a name and a magical illusion. Even the great status of a Chakravartin universal king, being a magical illusion, is but an abode to purify. Finding oneself in the three realms of existence, all is just a name and a magical illusion. Even the great status of a Chakravartin universal king, being a magical illusion, is but an abode to purify. Who can forget the dramas of elementary school? One day an individual was your best friend, the next day your sworn enemy. Same person, different label. As we become adolescents, as we become adults and we start dating, people go from stranger to sweetheart to partner, and then sometimes back to stranger again. They're the same person. But the labels and the roles keep shifting. The Greek philosophers said the only constant is change. There's a myth, a very ugly, scary, dangerous myth, that if we're just spiritual enough, nothing will ever hurt us. Malarkey. Or if just, you can't insult a humble man. Yes, you can. The part of our brain that is capable of thinking and believing is relatively new. The part of our central nervous system that's capable of perceiving the ebbs and flows of the interpersonal is ancient. Look at us compared to other animals. We are not the swiftest, we are not the strongest, but we can think, we can communicate, and we can cooperate. We are wired to cooperate. We are wired to value our relationships as if our survival depended upon it, because in a very real sense it did. In a different sense it still does. We are wired to feel massive pain at the loss of an opportunity of cooperation. We evolved that way to ensure our survival. And no amount of mental gymnastics will undo that. When the Buddha taught no self, he didn't teach it magically. He just taught it very... No self was always meant to be a metaphor. That whatever sense of self we experience as we breathe in, once we relax into our exhalation, it seems less graspable. It's just that simple. So many times we think my name, my reputation, my body, my mind, my sense of self. Whatever self we experience it, so with each, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever sense of self we experienced feels fleetingly less graspable. Now, there are a bunch of people who don't understand that, and some will use that maliciously as an excuse to abuse you. Well, I'm just helping you lose your sense of self. If you're truly spiritual, it wouldn't hurt. No, that's called gaslighting. And it is toxic. It is not loving. It is not wise. It is not empathetic. It is cruel. I've lived in enough monasteries to know that a bad haircut and odd robes do not a Buddha make. And there are many fools and fiends stomping about, calling themselves nuns and monks. Not all, but a few. This was explored delightfully in the movie What the Blank, or What the Bleep Do We Know? There's some people who just, the reason for living, their raison d'etre, forgive my pronunciation, is to cause others pain. Do not buy the malarkey. When we rest the great knuckle of our right ring finger upon the tip of our left ring finger, palms up in our lap, our real or imagined energies automatically, well, let's try this again. We can gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce in the navel region of our mid-abdomen. The most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently and mentally recite the verb noticing during each inhalation. And the most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently and mentally recite the verb relaxing during each exhalation. Together, let us relaxingly recite. For those whose attitude depends on time, it does not manifest in time. If one practices with an aspiration without being free, the saying on the characteristic of emptiness applies. For those whose attitude depends on time, it does not manifest in time. There are people who would say, well, I live in America. In America, there are a lot of people who receive a lot of politicians who receive a lot of money from the gun lobby. And whenever there's a shooting, they can be heard to say, oh, now is not the time to question our laws that set space for such a tragedy. Now is only the time for thoughts and prayers. But these people communicate disingenuously, protecting the people and lining their pockets. The rest of the world looks at America and points and scoffs and mocks and mourns. It's quite tragic. Similarly, there are those who would say, well, dude, I only meditate once every 12 hours, and that's when I meditate. And the rest of the time, I can just be just as angry and as miserable as I please. And you know what? They can't. It's their life. If we really want to make the most of things, we can take a 30-second break to notice our circumstance or notice what we're feeling and relax. I don't know about you, but one of the ways I regulate dopamine as someone with ADHD is through social media. And when I hear about a politician doing something horribly cruel to people and to planet, I feel very strong primal emotions. And the best thing I can do then is to notice what I'm feeling, and as well as the trigger that I'm feeling, and relax. And here's the cool thing. When something's triggering you, noticing them is effortless and automatic. That's what they call effortless meditation. Whatever is grabbing you by the lapels and shaking you like a French au pair, it's what you allow yourself to notice. And so one of the great ironies is that that which could rob us of our peace actually strengthens our peace. Together, beginning with the word if. If one practices with an aspiration without being free, the saying on the characteristic of emptiness applies. The Tao Te Ching warns us that regardless of how lofty our goals are, a goal is still a goal. It's an indulging of our controlling tendencies. If we just practice mindfulness and meditation, the spontaneous empathy we generate, is all the magic we require. Let's continue. For those whose attitude depends on time, it does not manifest in time. If one practices with an aspiration without being free, the saying on the characteristic of emptiness applies. So in other words, whatever lofty magic we think we are doing or manifesting as we breathe in, as we relax, it feels quite non-graspable. It is quite non-graspable. So this is a lovely poetic way of saying that magic and manifesting do more harm than good. Let us be men and women of spontaneity, centered, loving spontaneity. For those whose attitude depends on time, it does not manifest in time. If one practices with an aspiration without being free, the saying on the characteristic of emptiness applies. For those whose attitude depends on time, it does not manifest in time. If one practices with an aspiration without being free, the saying on the characteristic of emptiness applies. For those whose attitude depends on time, it does not manifest in time. If one practices with an aspiration without being free, the saying on the characteristic of emptiness applies. Let us, as we rest the great knuckle at the base of our right little finger, upon the tip of our left little finger, palms up in our lap. We gently invite our real or imagined subtle energies to automatically coalesce at the bladder region of our lower abdomen. As we inhale, we can passively notice mind's antics. As we exhale, we can relax into mind's non-graspable nature. you have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 12 2/3 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's morning meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always. Shivi, you are my friend. You are utterly welcome.